In the quarterfinals, we had the Wolfpack with a taste for the Penguins as they laid Wilkes-Barre Scranton to rest in 4. In the other 3 series, each one saw Game 7, and that doesn't describe the half of it. The Ice Hogs outfoxed the Wolves in an animal battle for the ages. The Americans survived a surging Syracuse crunch as they finally blew out their candle on home ice. And the Glass Slipper is halfway on the Cinderella-storied Bakersfield Condors as they remain undefeated in Game 7s to send the San Diego Gulls flying home in an upset. And we now have 2 huge semifinal matchups to discuss. With TSibs and Moranaconda, I'm the other guy, Vhigh. This is LG Hockey Hotline.
And what a fun week it was with some interesting games and some outcomes that were not surprising, but the fact that we got far into a couple of series might have been a little bit. Hi, everyone. T-Sibs. As you just heard, Vhigh and Moranaconda, we are all here now live on a Saturday night, July 23rd, and it is now semifinal time. And, gentlemen, it was a lot of fun last week just being able to watch some of these games and see some great matchups all around, and where a couple of series looked like they might end quickly, all of a sudden teams were coming back, like the San Diego Gulls, to make it an interesting finish to that one. And again, just a lot of great play in the games that we've been able to see, and thankfully most people were able to stream their games, but a lot of great competition, and I tell you what, it's been probably just as exciting this season, Moran, as it was for Season 1 with the way these playoffs have gone and the kind of competition we're seeing.
Absolutely. We have a couple of teams, that kind of everybody was, just pegging for the conference finals, at the big, around week 2 or week 3, once they saw the start that the Rochester Americans and the Rockford Ice Hogs got off to, but not to be outdone. The Hartford Wolfpack has, constantly been at the top of the league all season long, and they've just been flexing their muscles here in the playoffs, and really just dominating. And not necessarily dominating score-wise, but they're finding ways to get it done. And they've yet to lose in the playoffs, and they're right up there with the other 2 teams. And then you got the Cinderella story, like Jonathan said. You got the Bakersfield Condors, who are right up in the mix of things here, playing great hockey. They're really coming together and gelling at the right time. Not to say that they weren't gelling all season, but they've been playing playoff hockey since about week 5, and they are showing no signs of slowing down yet. So we're in store for a great couple of series here, and can't wait to get it going here.
Yeah, I thought a lot of different things over the past week as we watched these series kind of unfold, and you have the Wolfpack, who went through in a sweep in their second straight round here. They're looking really good. They're winning every game they're in, and they've of course had 4 overtime games this playoffs. They're undefeated in those. It seems to be the complete team right now. They're winning by doing everything. They're scoring at the right times. They're playing defense. Their goalies are playing outstanding. I'm excited about this series with Rochester. Those are the 2 teams that everybody probably picked at the beginning of the playoffs to face each other here in the semifinals. It'll be an interesting matchup for sure, and what both of those teams did this last series could shape how that series turns out. Rochester had to fight for this one against the Crunch. Forthy was pretty game that series. He got his team there to Game 7, and Rochester was able to get it done. It was pretty cool to see 3 Game 7s. The Wolves and Ice Hogs, that was a great series. It was one of the best series of the postseason this far, and could be by the end one of the best series of the entire thing. And Rockford got it done in 7, and Vibes put up a hell of a fight with the Wolves over there, but just couldn't get it done this time against the regular season champions. So I guess you could say Rockford did what it was supposed to, and they're moving on to face the I don't know, do we call them streaking at this point, or are they just another team here in the
They're
mix?
just a
The
good team.
Bakersfield Condors, man, they're playing amazing, and they're doing it at the right time of the season. And they had a 3-1 series lead in both of their series, and it went to a Game 7, and they still pulled it out. That's pretty impressive. Sibs, what are you thinking about what you saw there at the end of um, the second round of the playoffs, and we head in here with these two huge semifinal matchups? What team was your standout team of that last round?
Well, I tell you what, I think the Condors have to be noticed as the one that the team that has no matter what happened during the regular season, they are playing on par with teams that had dominated all year long. And San Diego just blew out San Jose in round one, and I really felt like that's a tough team to have to go up against because they just have everything going. They are not missing a beat anywhere, but Bakersfield just played them incredibly well, and like you said, could have put that series out a lot sooner than they did. And San Diego's good enough to come back. They didn't play their best game all series long, but they were able to come back and make that a 7-game series. But I would probably say the Condors are the real surprise team and the one who's really stepped up and maybe playing over their heads. Rockford. I tell you what, early in that series, not just because it was 2-0, but just because of the way that Chicago was playing, Rockford looked like they were having a hard time matching lines up. All series long, it went back and forth, and because of the matchups, and I think we see that with the Condors Gull series, we've seen it with most series, it really does have a lot to do with what lines you put out there and who you're matching up against. And we saw different games from one game from between Rockford and Chicago, and then the next game it was a totally different game, and who dominated play and what line was doing that dominating, and whether or not the goaltender was their number one or not, I think was also a factor in that. So matchups and getting your top goaltender as much time as you can, played a big part of this of these series, and gave Rockford a chance to come back in that one again down 2-0 in the series and make it a Game 7 and be there to win it. But it's right now I'm seeing all matchups as being the reasons why teams have won those series and being able to get their best line out there when they needed to and take a couple of games.
Yeah. Before we go any further, I just want to talk about our poll question real quick, because it kind of goes right in line with how this whole show is going to be breaking down. It says, after the semifinals, who will be your Calder Cup Finals matchup next week? Rochester versus Rockford has 4 votes. Rochester versus Bakersfield has 2 votes. Leading the way right now is Hartford versus Rockford, the Battle of the Fords. 5 votes, and Hartford versus Bakersfield has 3 votes. So, just based on that, you can see that Bakersfield's starting to get some love around the league, having votes on both the matchup versus Rochester or Hartford. I don't know, maybe saying Bakersfield doesn't really care who they play, they're just going to try and get it done the way they get it done. I think that you talking about the Condors like that, one thing that Mike has a stat that he's going to want to bring up about Broski, who we're going to have on here in a little bit. We can ask him about how this series went compared with the first one and how he's feeling. But Mike, what's that stat you have on Broski this postseason?
Well, believe it or not, he is the only person on the Condors that is 6-0 in the playoffs. That is astounding to me. That tells me that he is giving it his all, and he's making his teammates better around him. And, the guy is on fire, absolutely on fire. He's got 6 games played, 15 points, 9 goals, 6 assists. He's a +10, and he is 6-0. That is huge. I mean, he is absolutely just getting it done, and that tells you that he's not playing with the same guys every game. That he gets an opportunity to play. He's playing with different line mates. But it just seems like anytime Broski's on the ice, they're winning games, and that's extremely impressive to me, especially in these playoffs and the talented teams that they've come up against so far. I mean, that's consistency. That's a leader getting it done right there.
Well, he's got 6 wins, and his team only has 8, so he's been a part of 75% of their playoff wins, and he's got 6 wins against the top 2 teams from that division in the Rampage and the Gulls, which are no sneezes to get 3 wins against for a single player there. If you as a single player play against and of course he's playing with his team. I'm not saying he's out there by himself, but for him to get matched up against 2 of the top teams in this league, and regardless of who he played with or which line he played against, neither team was able to stop him in either series. That's pretty impressive. And, I'm excited for him because he was really excited last time he was on and talked about his team. And, it's going to be interesting to see how they handle this one because Rockford's a different animal. They are probably the most potent offense across the boards with a solid defensive core. But their offense is probably the toughest one in the league to come up against. If you had to pick one on any given night or in any given series, they just score so many goals. We'll see how the Condors are able to stop them. But, if they have a game like they did against the Rampage in Game 7 and put up 24 shots to 7 shots, who knows? You could see something like that out of Bakersfield in one of the games. I just think it's going to be super interesting, and it's really cool that on the Eastern Conference side you have the 2 top teams in the conference facing off against each other, and then you have the top team in the Western Conference facing off against a huge underdog that is really – they're only an underdog by pre-playoff standing status, but as far as second half of the season, I bet you they were probably the second or third best team in the league the second half of the season. So I don't know where to really hold them as far as that, but they definitely are a little bit of an underdog, and I think it's going to be really interesting to watch these.
Well, I think you can't take them lightly. I mean, you definitely got to come to the rink ready to go. Rockford's got their work cut out for them. They're coming up against a team that's firing on all cylinders right now, and it seems like they can do no wrong. And when they do wrong, they come back and do right the next game. So I mean, they're playing great hockey. Everybody's getting it done. If you go through the playoff statistics, Broski's at the top or near the top in almost every offensive statistical category. They're just, and Carlson's right up there at the top. In goals, they're getting it done, man. They're definitely no longer an underdog here. I think they're definitely a force to be reckoned with moving forward.
It's funny if you look at Rockford, and obviously they dropped the first 2 games of that last series, but they went 4 out of 5. Moving forward after that, and offense a big part of their game, but they held the Wolves to 2 of those games to 1 goal, and the other 2 to 2 goals in their victories. So their defense and their goaltending, when need be, can play good enough and really stymie a Chicago team that struggled in those last 4 out of 5 games. They had a 5-4 victory in between those 4 games, but Rockford was able to play good defense when need be, and I think they've shown against a really solid Chicago team that they again went down 2-0, but they did not panic. They just played their game. They let their guys get out there. Rhino and his line got out there and did a lot of damage. And so I know Chisnasty had a lot of concerns about his lineup, about where he was going with it, trying to match up with Chicago. It was a difficult assignment, and it was looking like in the first 2 games that he was really he was correct in feeling like it was going to be a big problem. But his players, I don't think it really makes a difference what anyone else is throwing at them at this point. they just seem to always wind up playing their game. They set the tempo. If you watch these games, they seem to be easily every game the ones who had more control of the ice and the puck, and Chicago played their damnedest, but Rockford again winds up dictating the pace and the tempo and the momentum. It's just so hard to defeat that, and the Condors are going to need to find a way to try and disrupt them from their normal game, and I'm not sure I've been able to figure out how to do that yet, and neither has anyone else.
Yeah. You never know how these things are going to play out, and I think with the Condors right now, you just have to hope that they continue to stay within themselves the way they've done and just show up and play hockey, because crazier things have been done. They can definitely pull this out if they handle the series the right way. And the keys for them may be they need to attack definitely when they get the backup goaltender for the Ice Hogs, and they're probably going to have to think more in practices and kind of game plan a little bit more about how they're going to play against that Rockford first line, if they're going to try and run their offensive game, or are they going to play defense and try and work on counter punches to win that one. It'll be interesting to watch play out, because I guarantee you every game you watch of this series, it's going to look like a different game out there, because both teams are going to be throwing out adjustments left and right. It's going to be really interesting.
Well, did anybody that game 7? I just to kind of change gears here. I happened to catch that game 7 between Rochester and Syracuse, and that game was a defensive battle over there in the Eastern Conference, and it was 1-1 almost the entire game. They were really shutting down the offensive zones. Had a lot of neutral zone play in that game, and and it came down to the very end there, and overtime. And what do we say in overtime? Get the pucks at the net. And what happened? Rochester shot the puck at the net over there, and it bounces off a leg and goes in. It was just a tough way to watch that one go down, but it was a hard-fought game. Did anybody else have a chance to catch that one?
I looked in after the game was over and watched a little bit of it. I wasn't around when it was going on, but yeah, it's a heartbreaking way to lose, and it's also an incredible feeling to win that way. But you're right, that goes back to what we were talking about last show and the show before. In overtime, get the puck to the net, from all different angles.
It's like
don't look pretty.
They don't allow pretty goals in overtime, man. I swear to God, it does not happen. Like, when they shot that puck and it bounced off somebody's leg or their skate or whatever it was and went in, I was like, yep, that's about par for the course.
Well, I've seen overtime games where there's a breakaway, the goalie comes out of the net, and the guy walks around the goalie, has an open net, and misses it. It either hits the post or goes wide by 10 feet because you're a grinder or whatever it may be. Yeah, you got to hope for some bounces. They have the saying, better lucky than good. You have to be good to make it through these playoffs. There's no doubt about that. But you're going to have luck go your way if you're going to win 4 series, especially on an EA Sports Hockey League video game, because it doesn't, as much as they try and make it realistic, it's still a video game, so there's weird things that could happen, and they do on random occasions. So you're gonna have to have bounces go your way, and when you're a good team and you have bounces go your way, you're almost unstoppable.
Right. I mean, we're one bounce away from sitting here talking about a Wolfpack versus Crunch Eastern Conference final. You know, I mean, it's literally a game of inches and a game of bounces, and you know, it could have just as easily went the other way in overtime there. I mean, you know, the Amherst did dominate that game pretty good as far as time on attack. They doubled them up on actually, you know, they doubled them up on shots and they doubled them up on time on attack. But you know that, I mean, like I said, it was right there. You know, just 1-1, playing the hell out of some hockey. And you know, it was super. You know, I was on the edge of my seat sitting here watching that game because you know, it's just like, you know, you're watching both teams and you're rooting for both teams. Really, you're just, you know, because you're completely right down the middle on it. And you know, it was just chance after chance, bounce after bounce, save after save. You know, and it was insane. And then just, you know, they get the puck down in there, get set up in the offensive zone, and boom, bam, boom, game over. It was just like, whoa, oh, that was quick.
Yep.
So, but you know, that's overtime, and you know, I think that's really set up for a nice matchup over there in the Eastern Conference between Rochester and the Wolfpack. I think that's going to be a highly entertaining series.
Yeah. It's funny that you watch a series that goes 7 games like that, and you know, having an overtime game, you've had 60 minutes 7 times, and it comes down to a bounce.
Right.
and it could go either way. You know, it's kind of
What would you
crazy.
expect for a game 7 though? You know, it goes to overtime. You know, just
Typical.
all the build-up. It's perfect. You know, it's absolutely perfect. You could not have asked for a better. I mean, the Crunch could have asked for a better ending, but you know, just the whole thing. Like you said, you get through the 6 games, you get to that game 7. It's game 7. It's go time. Everybody's amped up. Everybody's ready to go, and you just get to overtime and game 7. I mean, there's no bigger moment than that right there. That's what everybody is thinking of when they start the season off. You know, and you know, it's pretty cool to see it, all the bounces, all the goals, all the stops, all the saves, all the, you know, everything come down to the final seconds in overtime, and that's how it's won. It's crazy. This is a crazy game.
It really is. It's funny that we watched one series go in 4 and then 3 go in 7, and the intensity that was up between the teams that were in 7. There were 6 teams that were preparing for a game 7, and hearing those guys talk in the GM chat, seeing people talk in the shout box, you could really see that there was tension because those games were so important. And the way it unfolded after we were on the air Tuesday for the last several games of the series, really, it's amazing. We saw one series end on Tuesday night on air, and then, you know, every single other one made it to the last possible game.
2 more days.
Right, and 2 more days, and you really can't ask for a story to be written much better than that as a viewer. I'm sure all the other 6 teams that went to 7 would have loved to have been in Hartford's position and have won the first 4 and not had to deal with it, because it was, you know, as much stress as they probably had in 4 games. I guarantee it wasn't even close to what it was to be in a game 7.
Right.
So we should have Broski jumping on any minute here, and he'll join us. We'll break down that last series and then ask him what's going on here, what his plans are for the next one. I guess until we get him on, we can go ahead and start with our predictions portion here and start talking about the next round. Unless you have anything else to say about the anything else on the quarterfinals, I think we should go ahead and move on here.
No, I just want to say, you know, bravo to Chicago. You know, they had a great season. Vibes does a really good job with his team. He scouts well. Kind of sad to see them go out, but hey, you know, that means another team's moving on. So, you know, Rockford moves on, and you know, I just want to say congratulations to the Gulls as well. They put together a really good season. Wilkes-Barre Scranton put together a hell of a second half, and they really deserved their place that they got in the playoffs, and as well as did the Crunch. They had a great season. They were not a pushover at all against big teams. They were taking out some of the best teams in the league. They were one of the best teams in the league all season, and kudos to them too for making it to the quarterfinals and the playoffs. And hang your heads high, guys. It's nothing to sneeze at making it to the quarterfinals. On to next season for those teams, and on to the semifinals for the other 4 teams.
Yep. And if it makes it sound a little better to you, you made it to the conference semifinals. If you don't want to say quarterfinals, it's further than we made it along this year. I'd be proud to say that myself. So we do have Broski joining on here. Just go ahead and start letting your feelings and emotions out, man. I'm sure you got
I love how you say that.
What's going on?
How you feeling, man?
Just a little nervous already.
Yeah.
Balls are sweating already. Hands are sweaty. I'm kidding.
You're on house money.
It's been pretty good so far. I think the guys are pretty excited for the next round, and I gotta shout out the San Diego Gulls by a lot there. They played one hell of a series. Honestly, I thought my team would take it in 6 after we went up 3-1, and it did not happen that way. A lot went wrong and a lot went good, but in the end, it was a battle and a half, and I expect that from the Ice Hogs too. And I hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, you guys ain't gonna do it. You guys might do it. If you do pull it off, it's gonna be a fluke," and a lot of that. But I just say it really don't matter at this point, Well, at the end of the day, the only thing that's gonna matter is the 7 games that we played this week.
Yeah, 100%.
It can go both ways.
And you guys have made it to 7 after being up 3-1 both times. And was it any easier this time around for a Game 7 as far as your mental preparation for the team because you had been through it just a round before that?
We don't take a Game 7 as it's a Game 7 do or die. We take it as it's Game 1. Let's go out there and give it all we got and bring it to them and hope for the best.
Yeah, I have to say, and I know I probably speak for Sibs, but definitely speak for Mike in saying that I love your attitude and how you've handled this situation with your team in the playoffs. You're so even keel about it. You don't get over high that you've won 2 enormous series against 2 of the best teams in the league in the Rampage and the Gulls. I don't really think anybody picked you guys to be there just because of where you were in the standings, even though you had an outstanding second half. But it's really incredible to see how it's unfolding for you guys. It's a super interesting story. And, yeah, it is a little bit of a Cinderella story, and you guys seem to have embraced it really well.
Most definitely. It all started after trade deadline. I think that's where the team really woke up and was like, hey, well, if we want to do it, we got to do it now, and there's no best time to do it than after trade deadline. And go out there, give it all you got, you make it. If you don't, you don't. And, just got to play it one game at a time, and that's what we did. And, well, now look at us.
I feel like that gives you a little bit of an advantage, right? Because you guys have been playing playoff hockey since the trade deadline. You guys have been playing a live and die hockey since the trade deadline and even before, and I feel like it's kind of thickened your skin up a little bit. How you think that's a fair assessment?
I definitely think that's fair. I mean, before trade deadline, I think we lost like 4, 5, 6 in a row, and team was all down. I'm like, guys, we're definitely not out of it yet. I mean, I'm like, trade deadline's right around the corner. We'll turn things around from there, and somehow I think we won 12 in a row or something like that, and made it through the first 2 rounds, and just gonna try and keep it up at this point.
I love that you can hear the excitement in your voice, man.
What's really interesting about your team, Broski, is that I think you can look at a lot of other teams and some of the other teams in the playoffs and say you could point to 1 or 2 players who have to be on in order for that team to make it and do well to get to the next round. You've got a lot of good players on your team, but I think I think the fact that you've got you've got a lot of talented players who just play as a team is probably your strong suit. You don't have to count on any one person, besides the fact that you're 6-0 so far in the playoffs. But other than that, you're not counting on one guy or two guys to carry you, are you?
No, I mean, I think I played on all three lines so far. I just do what works best for the players. And if one guy's like, "Well, I'd much rather not play this night," I'll play him the next night. I don't mind. All my guys can play together. All my guys are comfortable playing together. So I mean, that's one thing I don't have to worry about. Like a lot of people, they're like, "Oh, I can only play with these two guys. I don't like this guy. I don't like that guy." But on my team, they're like, "No, I'll play with him. I'll play with him. I don't mind."
That's awesome. Coming out of the trade deadline, you guys played the Ice Hogs and the Wolves, and you lost both of those games, and then you won 12 out of the next 13 games to reclaim your standing as a playoff team, really, because everybody had the Stars making the playoffs, and the way that everything played out, you were able to make it in, and yeah, that's probably your turning point in the season right there that you pointed at. Impressive job winning 12 out of 13. That's crazy, especially the teams that you played against in that streak.
We didn't play easy teams, that's for sure, the way I've looked at it. I mean, every team we go into a game with, I'm like, no, these guys aren't going to be easy. I'm like, every team's hard. We faced Springfield. They beat us, I think, like most times we face them, they beat us. And, the problem is if we go into the games against, like, the teams that were like, oh, yeah, well, on paper we're supposed to beat them, all the guys are already going in there like, oh, well, we got this. And I think that's where we really stepped it up now. Now we're like, okay, well, we're going up against, like, first round, Rampage came around the corner. I'm like, guys, this is not going to be easy. And we got guys, oh, we got this, we got that. No, guys, this is not going to be easy. And, well, in the end, we just played our hockey, and it happens.
Yep. Well, you lost to the Rampage your 80th game of the season with 3 to go, 6-3, and then you lost game 1 against them, but then you won 3 in a row, and I think that's probably the turning point right there so far, was for your guys to break through and win 3 straight against Mooner and Loki over there. It's really good job by you guys as a team, because you guys are rolling through pretty well, and even when you've gotten up 3-1 and went back down to a game 7, losing 2 in a row, so far you've been able to hold up. Mike talked about a stat with you earlier. You're the only person on your team. You're 6-0 in the playoffs. You're undefeated so far, and you haven't. And since you're the only one that's undefeated, clearly you're playing with different guys. How are you choosing which place you're playing on? Are you playing a matchup, or are you guys you're that comfortable with your team that whoever can go that night, that's who's going?
Basically, I ask the guys what night works best for them, and I mean, most nights the guys are able to play the same night, and they're pretty good. So most nights I'm able to be like, well, if I put you, and you out there, you guys are good to go, and they're like, yeah, I don't mind. And I actually had a guy, Zester. I'm sure you guys. I think I've heard you guys talk about him a few times. He's like, I have to work till 10:30. I'm like, I need you this game. Can you? I'm like, there's no way you can come in. He's like, well, actually, let me talk to my coworker. And he's actually gotten off work early to come to a game before, which I was like really surprised about. But I mean, he's one hell of a team player, and I can hear you guys laughing and stuff in the background. I found it quite amusing too when he first said, "No, I got some time off. I asked for leave an extra hour early," and he played the game. I found,
man.
Yeah, well, when I had to call him up in the first round, and I don't think people expected him to turn out to be the first line defender with my other guy.
Right.
Well, I think what's really interesting, and you just said it, is you're not playing necessarily set lines, and I think a lot of teams do that, and for good reason most times. But maybe the secret is you've got guys who can play that way, and they don't need to have to feel like they have to play with a certain player in order to know that style. That you guys are just playing a certain style that everyone understands, and it doesn't really matter who you play. And that's kind of what it seems like when I'm watching your games, is that there is a pattern, there is a way that you guys go about attacking offensively and playing defense. So I don't think for your team it really matters who's with whose line, and obviously your guys don't have an issue with it either.
Yeah, at the beginning of the season, I'm pretty sure I thought I had the same understanding as every other general manager. I thought like lines would be the best way to go, and it was really my owner that talked me and my general managers out of like getting set lines and getting people to play with the same people all season long. And I think it really went a long way because now he told me at the beginning of the season when I said I wanted to get set lines started from like day one. He's like, yeah, that's not going to happen. He's like, you're going to need people that can play with everybody. That really we tried it out and it just seemed to work after a while, Yeah. Now here in playoffs, I'm able to put like together 3 random guys and be like, hey, you want to play? Yeah, sure. Okay, whoever wants to play, message me next. And then I could do that if I wanted to, and I'm comfortable with playing whoever I need to play.
That's a good advantage to have for sure, especially if your guys are available to do all that kind of stuff. It really gives you a bunch of options, especially if you do put something together and it doesn't work, you can mix it up the next game. So Beefy sent me a message and he said, "Tell Broski their Cinderella underdog story is fake, and I'm not buying into it. The pack knows they were a great team and that they just had a rough patch earlier this season, but nice cover-up, fake slumps in the middle of the season."
I mean, the funny thing is I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. I'm going to say it anyways. At the beginning, before bidding started, DT was supposed to be on my team, that motherfucker. I was like, me and Johnny were talking. I'm like, Johnny, we're getting DT on my team. I'm like, I don't care. I'm like, I'll spend some money on him. I'm like, I want him on my team. I like the guy and everything. So me and DT have been friends for quite a while now. Me and him have nothing but respect for each other.
And he decided to go around a different team, huh?
Yeah, it disappointed me a little bit.
Well,
I'm happy for him now, though. In the end,
he couldn't leave the pack, man.
Right. Yeah, and if you guys can play your cards right this round and take on an extremely difficult Rockford Ice Hogs that will definitely be an extreme test, and a lot will say will be too much for you guys, though I think it's a lot closer than people realize. You've got a chance to maybe get a head-to-head matchup against him and prove that he should have gone to your team possibly if you can get by the Ice Hogs.
Yeah, I've never down to proving anyone wrong except for the haters, the guys that don't think we're going to make it any further. It's like, okay, well, I mean, right. I can prove you wrong.
Yeah, that's really the one to focus on.
Yeah, I don't care about the beef that people throw at me. I mean, I might throw the odd comment back. I mean, you saw in the general manager chat today, but
yeah.
I mean, I don't really hate anyone. I just I think the one part that gets me in trouble the most is I like to speak my mind every now and then.
Right. Well, it keeps you on a level where everybody knows you're being honest, and
yeah.
And that's how I think you've been so far when you've been on the show these 2 times, that you are really comfortable in giving a breakdown of your team, and it seems like you guys have the right attitude as you move forward here. I'm really excited about this series against Rockford for you because, I mean, honestly, there might be games, especially against maybe Kraz and Shiz in that line, or possibly against Rhino or something. There could be games, right? There could be games where you're playing a lot of defense, and you're going to have to throw some counter punches and figure out how to attack. And I think you might be the perfect team to try and figure that out against the Ice Hogs. We'll definitely have to see. It's going to be super interesting. Thank you again for coming on this week and last week. It's great having you on. I love talking to you, and we'll keep having you on if you keep moving on.
All right, well, I may or may not see you guys next week then. I'm kidding.
Well, do your best to be here. Make it an appointment.
I'm trying my best,
Right. Well, good luck, man.
All right, thank you guys.
Luck, buddy.
Great job.
Have a good night, bud.
All right.
And that was Broski 002, special agent for the Condors. Love having him on. He's got such an addictive personality. It's extremely positive in nature, and he's he might be stressing a little bit, but he sure doesn't show it. He seems to be extremely happy and ready to go against the Ice Hogs and prove all the doubters wrong.
You can hear it in his voice. You can hear confidence and excitement in his voice, and that's what it's all about. I think it's cool, man. He's pumped. He's got his team really firing on all cylinders, and they're one hell of a force to be reckoned with right now. And I think that Rockford's going to have their hands full.
Those unorthodox teams like that who are doing things differently than everybody else, those are the ones who are a lot of fun to watch, because it's one thing when you're playing a team who you can figure out and you can match up against, and you can figure or you can think about how you want to play them. I don't know if there is a way to to pinpoint an attack against Bakersfield. I think you have to go and play your own game, but if you're trying to match up, if you're trying to play a certain style, I don't know if that makes a difference. I know that Rockford has to play their game, because I don't know if it really matters what anyone does against them if they play the way they're capable of playing, in the style that they like to play, in the speed that they play with. But if they're looking to match up against the Condors, I think that can be a problem if they try and go that route, because Bakersfield does not necessarily have a specific way of doing anything, and that just has to drive a GM crazy. And if Chaz Nasty thought he had it tough last week because he was playing a really good team, he's going to play another good team that is not going to be easy to figure out. And does he get suckered into doing something because he thinks he's trying to match up with Bakersfield, or does he just go ahead and play the same game and the same lineups that he's been doing? I think if you're going to play them, you've got to play Bakersfield on your terms and not theirs, because if you do play the way they want you to play, and think about matchups with them, it's not going to. I don't think it's going to make a difference. And I think that's one thing we've learned about the Condors. They throw all logic out the window for all of us who are guessing on these games, and they just go ahead and play, as a team, with different guys every game, and there's no way you can match up against that.
Right. Well, the other part of that is that they're what he just said is how comfortable each of those forwards and defensemen are of playing with each other. For Rockford, they can't just say, okay, well, when the Broski line's out, we'll throw out this line. Or when the Carlson line's out, we'll throw out this line. Because there's not a line. There's not even really a pair, it seems like. It's just, we'll throw this line out tonight because they haven't seen that yet and they won't know how to defend it, or whatever it may be. It gives them a ton of options, and it's going to be extremely interesting to see exactly how the matchup game plays out. Rockford gets to host the first two games of the series just like they did in the first two, and you would think that is a matchup advantage for them, but so far they are 0-4 in their first two home games of each series, and have not used the home ice advantage for the lineups yet. Whether that be coincidence or ECUs or anything like that, they're 0-4 in those first four games, and the Condors might not be a team you want to go down 2-0 too quickly like that. I did think that about Chicago when they went down 0-2 against Chicago, but the way the Condors are, you're probably never going to see the same line twice in that series. You might not want to go down 0-2 in this one.
That's for sure. And that being said, you want to just jump right in and start breaking this series down and
Yep.
and hit the numbers of it, because I think this is going to be one hell of a series here, and it's kind of a, like you guys were saying, I think that the Condors really have an advantage here with the way that they've been playing. And the fact that they can throw out anybody at any point in time, basically, okay, Carlson, you can play Monday. All right, man, we'll go ahead and throw you out there with whoever. And I think that's a big advantage, and I think that's going to really work in the Condors' favor against Hartford. But then, or not Hartford, but Rockford. But then again, I mean, Rockford is a solid team like that as well, and we've seen them match or mix the lines up a little bit here. In the playoffs so far, they've kind of mixed and matched. They had Kraz playing center the other night in a game against Chicago, and it's going to be an interesting series to keep an eye on. That's for sure.
I think I was just going to say, for the Condors, and pretty much I've been doing this all season long, which is talking about the goaltenders. But let's not discount them because they don't have a San Jose or a Moon or whoever on their team. They've got Galley, who has had a couple of tough games in the last series against the Gulls, but still a very solid goaltender. And our old buddy Abdiel is 3-1 in the playoffs so far, and he's a good, steady goaltender. You don't need a guy to stand on your head, and I think Bakersfield has proven that. Abdiel has gone out there and played his game and has been able to backstop them enough to keep them in position to win their games. And I think, I don't think that's a weak link for them. I think they've got some solid goaltending that can take them. And Galley has the ability to really stand on his head. He had a 3-2 win against San Diego where he faced 28 shots on goal in that series. So we know that he can be a game changer, and he may have had a couple of tough losses against him as well, but he is a good goaltender, and Abdiel is there as well, and I think the Condors, if they get really solid goaltending, are going to be a bit of a handful for Rochester and who have I'm sorry for Rockford, who of course I think don't have necessarily any goaltenders who are going to light the world on fire either, but they also have decent talent there. So here's two teams that have gone this far who don't have that guy in net who's absolutely going to move up to the NHL next year. They've got some good players in net who can play the game well and play within what their team needs.
Well, yeah, and they don't have that guy like say Rask on Rockford, who's 8-1. He's played 9 games so far in the playoffs. Both of their guys are kind of even keeled. They're playing almost the same amount, and it's really working out for them.
I think this series is going to come down to one thing in the same, but two different things. It will be, can any combination of Bakersfield lines stop the Rockford offense? And can the Rockford lines stop any of the combination of the Condors lines? And that's what makes this matchup so intriguing, is that you never know who you're going to get for the Condors, and the Ice Hogs will straight up tell you who you're going to get, and then they'll still beat you with them. So it's going to be extremely interesting to watch, and the Condors could definitely, I would say they probably definitely have the goaltender advantage in this series. We'll have to find out how big or little an offensive advantage and defensive advantage it is for either of the two clubs. But it's going to be interesting, and we'll see, guys like Carlson, MVP, Broski, hopefully going head to head with guys like Kraz and Shiz and those guys over there from Rockford, and it'll be really interesting to see how guys of that caliber match up. When you look at the Rockford roster, they've got a couple of guys on here that are playing extremely well in the playoffs, like Kamagraf, but he's only played in 3 games. He's 3-0, but he hasn't been in 4, 5, or 6 games in the series yet. He's only played 3. So we'll have to see how availability works out this round with Rockford, and if the Condors can keep their availability as wide open as it seems, they could exploit some matchup advantages in that situation as well. So we'll just have to see. Mike, how do you see, when it comes down to brass tacks, how do you see this series between Rockford and Bakersfield coming out and heading into the Calder Cup final from the Western Conference?
Well, like we've talked about, Rockford's got that offensive punch. They play a puck possession game. You know, they get the puck in the offensive zone and they possess it. They hang on to it. They dominate when they have the puck. And you know, they work it around and they get the defense moving and they pot one in on you. You know, I think the key to this series for Bakersfield is going to be to play their game, play their defensive style that they play, keep Rockford to the outside, and just, you know, really work on, you know, creating havoc for Rochester in the offensive zone. But you know, or not Rochester, Rockford.
Rockford.
Rockford's like it's like the perfect mix between Hartford and Rochester, and I keep
Right.
like, but you know, I think yeah. But you know, there's a guy on Rockford, you know, to kind of watch out for. He was a teammate of mine last night in Friday Night Puck, and he's kind of going under the radar, and that's King of Kush. King of Kush is a very solid player. You know, he is an assist dynamo. He passes the puck extremely well. He's a very, very good player, and you know, he's leading the playoffs in points right now. He's leading the playoffs in assists. You know, he's kind of like the secret weapon for Rockford over there that nobody really talks about. You know, Kraz and Rhino and Chiz and all these other guys get all the attention, but secretly over there, King of Kush has been having himself a great season, and it shows here in the playoffs. But you know, I am going to go ahead and make my prediction in this one, and I'm going to say the Condors play their game, play their style, they stick with it, they keep rolling, and they win this series in 6.
In 6? Is that what you said?
In 6, he said, yeah.
Wow. Lots of faith in Broski and the boys. I can't blame you for that faith. They have so far proved a lot of doubters wrong. Sibs, what do you think here?
Well, first of all, I think Mike better be prepared for a week worth of shoutbox hate talking towards him.
That is what it is, man.
But no, I look, I could see that happening. You know, you mentioned King of Kush, and you know, with 20 points, I'm not sure he's flying under the radar anymore. But from a center, 5 goals and 15 assists, you know, to me, that's what you want out of that position. You want a guy who's feeding the wings. You want a guy who's coming back and playing defense and not always putting himself in front of the net, getting behind the net, getting passes out, and I think that's what he's been able to do. For me, you know, I think you know, Broski mentioned Zefster and how well he's played on D. He's going to be a big key for them, and whoever else is going to step up with him and probably wind up going up against the better lines. Can that defensive line, who's going to play, you know, probably play like Rhino's line, can they stop them? Can they slow that team down and keep them off balance? That is going to be the key. I think the Condors will do whatever offense they're going to be able to do, and I think Rochester. I'm sorry, I said it as well. I think Rockford as well is going. They're going to put up their points. They're going to score goals. You know, there's only so much you can do to stop them, but can you stop them enough to give your team a chance? And I think the Condor goaltending and their defense are the key. If Zefster keeps playing the way he has been so far and can play solid D, they have a shot. But it is really hard to pick against Rockford and not give them this series. I think it goes 7, and I think Rockford is going to come away. And they, you know what, they may very well do the same thing that they've done the past 2 games. You know, it all depends on you know, what kind of play they get against their 1 and 2 game line and where they go from there. And so far, you know, even though they've dropped the first 2 games in the 2 series, they've always found a way to push by. And can they do that with the Condors this time? It's a really big question, but I think in the end they'll take it in 7, and the Condors. You know, Mike's pick is not one that I think is certainly impossible, absolutely possible in this game. But I just think Rockford has too much to not be able to take this one. And I think they started playing their best game in the Chicago series. Second half of that series, I think they played phenomenal. they keep playing that way, I think they take this one.
And how many?
7.
7? Well, I'm kind of doing the same thing here. As far as number of games, Sibs, I'm going 7, and I do think the Ice Hogs pull it out in 7. Part of that is I haven't picked the Condors to this point, so I don't want to start now and have it be my fault. And part of that is I think Rockford is going to, after 2 straight slow starts in their first 2 series, I think they're going to pull it together here and live up to their reputation and win this series. I think this one will be more difficult in the sense that I don't think you're going to see necessarily an 0-2 start by Rockford. I think this might just be alternating games all the way to a game 7. And, whatever team wins game 1, if you're alternating games in the series, you want to be that team because that means when game 7 rolls around, it's your turn to win. So we'll have to see how it goes. And, this one could see 7 overtime games and go to a quadruple overtime in game 7. But I think Rockford's going to pull this one out. I think the power of Kraz and Rhino and Shiz being on that line with Kraz and then Riney. I'm getting there. And the fact that they do have King of Kush and they can spread all these guys out on different lines, as long as they all can show up, I think Rockford can take this series in 7. I don't feel bad about the pick, though. I would love for the Condors to prove me wrong. It would be such a cool story for them to move on. So, you guys have been talking about it for 15 minutes. Do you want to move on to Rochester?
Just for the record, I did pick the Condors last round, so if they do lose, it's not my fault.
Well, I didn't. That's why I'm not. Mike, how do you see this is quite possibly we talked about the Wolves and the Ice Hogs last round as being probably or possibly one of the best series in the entire playoffs this LGAHLPSN Season 2. Rochester Hartford has the same kind of hopes here. We could see an outstanding 7-game series, or it could go in 4 if Hartford just continues to do what they do. Before I let you break down this series, though, Beefy, we're about to talk to you. Or about you, and we'll talk to you probably Tuesday night if you decide not to play. You guys let us go 1 week without talking about you enough and start blowing up my inbox with messages about how we never talk about the Wolfpack, and here we go. You're about to get talked about.
Well, this is the matchup we've been eyeing all season long. A lot of people across the league felt that it was going to be a Hartford Rochester Eastern Conference final, and that's exactly where we find ourselves. This series is going to start Sunday night. It's going to be a battle of the 2 best teams in the Eastern Conference without question. I think everybody agrees on that these are the 2 teams that should have gotten here. They've been the best 2 teams in the Eastern Conference all season long. They've got great leadership on both sides, and they've both just been ripping the league up all year. And, I think this is going to be an exciting series to watch because these teams are a lot alike. They play identical styles. But, the one thing that I'm looking at when I look at the series is, when it comes to penalty killing, the Wolfpack is still 100% on their penalty kill in the playoffs. That's insane to me. They have not given up a power play goal yet. But the Amerks are nipping right at their heels at 97.1% on the penalty kill. So they're doing a good job of keeping teams off the board on the power play as well. So, the key to this series is going to be to stay out of the box. And I know I say that a lot, but it's very important to stay out of the box. And it just goes to show that, in that game 7, for example, with between Rochester and Syracuse had 7 power plays and they didn't score on any of them. So,
That's
Rochester
crazy.
can play defense, and they can play defense down a man. So this is going to be an insane series to watch, and I'm going to keep a very, very close eye on this. I think the Wolfpack will lose their first games of the playoffs in this series, but I also think that the Wolfpack and Big Beefy and the boys are going to come out in 6 games with a victory over the Rochester Americans and upset them. Statistically speaking, since Rochester was the top point-getting team in the Eastern Conference, I think we see a Hartford versus Bakersfield Calder Cup final, and that's where I sit with this series, gentlemen.
Sibs, I imagine a little bit of goalie talk for this series from you. Let's hear it.
Well, you're absolutely right, but I tell you what, here's a goaltender that we haven't talked about who has played really well for the Americans, and that's Wu-Tang QC95. He has been a little bit of a surprise and somebody who has really helped this team out get to where they get to where they are. He has played incredibly well for them. He is 4-1 in the playoffs. He's he had he lost the game 1-0 that game 6 I believe, and won the game 7 game. Game 6, 17 shots on goal and only letting up 1 goal against the Crunch. But he has been playing tremendously in this playoffs, and you combine him with San Jose. Where do you find a weakness in the net? And right now, with the Americans, you don't find that weakness. And I think that is a tremendous thing for them to be able to get that second goaltender who can make sure that you're not getting much of a drop-off when San Jose is not playing. And so I think that is a huge thing for them, and have maybe put them in a position where they can take this one. And we've talked about Hartford all year long. We've talked about their 2 goaltenders, Jones and Big Lammers. Obviously, they have been fantastic in the playoffs. They have been great all year long, and Jones, of course, being more of a second-half player who has been phenomenal for them. 3-0 in the playoffs, 1 goal in 26 total shots, 96.2% save percentage, 2 shutouts of those 3 games, and it's awfully hard to pick against Hartford, the defending champions, with all that they have going on. This is going to be an incredibly close series, and this is going to be that Chicago-Rockford series that we saw last round. This is going to be the one that's really going to be a lot of fun to watch, and I don't think you can really say there's going to be anyone who's going to be an absolute standout in this one. But just because the Americans' goaltending has been playing so well, I'm going to take them in 7 games against Hartford, and the defending champs will not get a chance to defend in the final round. So obviously I'm seeing an Americans and Ice Hogs final coming up. Again, Hartford winning it would not, of course, be a shock, but I just think the Americans have everything going well, including the net, and Hartford certainly has that advantage as well in goaltending. But I think the Americans will just barely get this one out.
Well, when I look at this series, there's a lot of things I like about both of these teams. You have Flying Red 527 for the Rochester Americans, who was the guy that shut down, at the time, the league's leading scorer, Jay Clausen, was the only one to do it at that point. You have the GM, Ryan X28, who really put together an incredibly solid club. They've got possibly the best center left in the playoffs. Definitely, I would say the best center left in the playoffs, and one of the best centers in the league, and it's Johansson. I really love the Rochester Americans, and I would pick them to win this series, except when I look over at the Hartford Wolfpack and I see, 5-0, 2-0, 4-0, 2-0, 4-0, 2-0, 2-0, 4-0, 3-0, 1-0,
Not a
2-0,
single
2-0,
loss.
2-0. Nobody on their team knows how to lose. And I do think they will find out how to lose a couple games this series, 3 actually. But as much as I just gave you some trouble there, Beefy, I am picking you guys to advance to the finals, the Calder Cup finals against Rockford, and we will have the Goatford Calder Cup finals here. We'll find out which is the best of the Fords, the Heart or the Rock. And that's what my final is, my prediction here. Though would not be surprised to see it be Rochester versus Condors or any of the other matchups there. But I do believe Hartford gets through this series. I think they're a little bit deeper. As the playoffs have gone on. I wasn't totally convinced at the end of the season, but they have convinced me. They've got an outstanding defensive core, 2 great goalies. Their forwards are not shabby, with Beefy and Hazy Hype being a pretty dynamic duo together. I know they posted a poll question on the LG Threads page for AHL to see which one was better. Go vote so they can be done with that argument. But I think together they are outstanding and pretty formidable foe for anybody that steps on the ice against them. I would not be surprised to see Rochester win this series in 7. I do think they match up evenly enough where it's going to be a 7-game series, but I do think the Wolfpack are going to pull it out and move on and face Rockford and see how it looks when they get there. But it's been interesting getting through to this point to get down to these 2 matchups, because on one hand you have a matchup that many predicted, and on the other you've got a team that was predicted but a matchup that very few saw as possible. And the way that, when we come on Tuesday night to talk about the 2 games that are going to be going on between each team, it's going to be really interesting to see where the series sits at that point, see if we're going to have people ready to move on to the finals, or if we're going to have some tied series or something at the end of that night.
The thing that I love about the Wolfpack is, they have, you just go down the line and looking at their team as far as statistics go, and basically everybody on their team has points. Everybody except their shutdown defensive defenseman, who's only had an opportunity to play 2 games in these playoffs so far. But everybody, there's not somebody with like 20 points and somebody with 15, and everybody on the team's got almost equal amount of points, and they're just from top to bottom, they're so evenly, just everything's so evenly distributed throughout their team, and both of their goaltenders are great. I really like what Hartford's been doing so far.
Yeah, I think that's just it's an incredibly even series. But as much as I like a lot of the guys on Rockford and I picked them, man, it would be a hell of a story if Bakersfield could get past and get to the finals. It would be a lot of fun to see them get in there. Now I'm going to probably take a lot of crap on the shout box as well, but it would just be a lot of fun to see them get there. I think it would say a lot towards the kind of game that they play and the fact that they don't do things the normal way, and I pretty much live my life that way. So it would be nice to see a team that is out of the norm do something tremendous in the playoffs. But it's Rockford and either of the other 2 teams would be a great final, obviously.
Yeah, I do think that any matchup we can get is going to be a good one. The way that this round could break down, we could see any combination of teams going against each other out of these 4 teams and not have any better guess on who's going to win the cup based on that matchup. If the Condors get through, you're not going to just pick them to get swept by the Eastern Conference team, because the 3 teams they will have gone through to get there, you wouldn't dare pick them to get swept.
Right.
And with Rockford, if they get there, they're doing what they're supposed to, even though, I mean, that doesn't really mean anything. You still have to win the games. But I love the series that we have in front of us right now in the semifinals because there are so many things that we're going to see play out over the next 4 days or so, 5 days, and could really see some players emerge as potential stars for their team on the road to glory. And we're going to be here to catch you up with all that stuff. It's going to be super fun to watch, and now it's easy for us because we only have to flip back and forth between 2 games at a time as far as on the night, So, Sunday it'll be, I think it's was it 5:30, 6:30 for the games on East Coast time, or our time, I mean.
Oh, that's
8:30,
it can't be that
9:30.
early,
Sorry.
right?
Is it 8:30, 9:30, or 7:30, 8:30?
I actually don't even know what the schedule is. Is it? Are they staggering them?
Sure.
I would think, right?
Yeah, I think it's 7:30, 8:30. So we'll be able to watch these games kind of separate entities of themselves, and then when they get to Tuesday night, I'm sure that they play side by side with each other, and we could see a bunch of different stuff here, and it's going to be extremely exciting to see. That's for sure.
Well,
That's without a doubt.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's going to be a lot of action come Tuesday night when we go back on again to do our live playoff coverage, and we will be, just to remind people, we'll not only be here to talk about the games, but we will be streaming the games as well, so you'll be able to watch them with us. And that's been a lot of fun to do the last couple of weeks, guys. It's been great to bounce around games and see what's going on, and we've seen a lot of great action in these games in the playoffs, and I don't doubt that it will continue to go that way next week.
Yeah. So I just want to throw a stat out there real quick. Hartford is 16-0 in their last 16 games. They've won 8 straight in the postseason and ended on an 8-game win streak in the regular season. And they are 20 wins in their last 21 games, which is outstanding. And if you really go back, they didn't lose very many games at all. But 16-game win streak is, this team looks unstoppable right now. They don't know how to lose. They've played close games in that streak and have found a way to pull them all out, including 4 overtime victories in the playoffs. There's a bunch of storylines that we'll kind of do some research and put some stuff together about these teams to talk about on Tuesday as they're playing against each other head to head. But when you can just pull up a schedule and see 16 straight green wins written through the schedule, that's pretty impressive if you ask me. And I think that Rochester's looked similar until this past series against the Crunch too. So that'll be really interesting. The Condors, Broski, thanks for coming on. You were great again. Look forward to seeing how this series plays out with you guys. And Rockford, good luck. Keep doing what you're doing, and should be interesting to watch play out. You guys want to give final thoughts?
I just think Tuesday is going to be a heck of a go-round here with we're going to be able to focus on the 2 games at hand and, watch some great hockey unfold here as the playoffs move on. And by that time, we'll know, where we're kind of sitting in these series. So looking forward to seeing everybody on Tuesday, and good luck to everybody competing in the playoffs starting tomorrow.
Yeah, there's really not much else to say other than it's going to be great hockey to watch, and we are all going to be having a lot of fun watching these games coming up. I think that's it at this point, gentlemen, isn't it? Pretty much?
Yep. I just want to say one last thing here. The poll question that's up. So far, everybody's voted, and Hartford versus Rockford's leading the way with 8 votes at 38% as to who you think will be the Calder Cup final matchup. In a close second place with 7 votes, we have Rochester versus Rockford, and Then we got 4 votes for Hartford versus Bakersfield and 2 for Rochester versus Bakersfield. So that's what the poll question was. Thank you guys again. I am all out of ideas for tonight. It was a fun show to do, and I look forward to watching these games. There's not much left to be said. Let's see what happens out on the ice.
All right, folks, we will see you Tuesday night where we will be live with LG Playoff Center, and we will bring you both games that night, Game 3 of the AHLPSN Calder Cup playoffs. We will see you on Tuesday night.
Good luck, everyone.